Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Maqbool with you at PTV World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at two important stories. The first is going to be a focus on the issue of terrorism in the country, which of course, unfortunately has spiked again. And there is a lot of concern around what exactly it is that we're going to do, especially in terms of the kind of transnational terrorism that is now occurring in Pakistan and the linkages that we have established with evidence across the borders, particularly in terms of safe havens in Afghanistan. This is not a new issue that has been brought up again and again with the Afghan Taliban regime, but despite that, we haven't really seen the kind of response that is needed to ensure that their territory is not used against Pakistan or any other for that matter. But of course, with the way that this is continuing, there is a need to reflect upon our own strategies and approaches as well as to what needs to be done to deal with this threat once again within Pakistan, and then of course in terms of the elements that exist outside as well, and to see if there are any nuances and complications, particularly in terms of the groups involved, that also need to be factored in when we take a look at our responses. And then of course with regards to financial and communication chains between different terrorist networks that have to be addressed as well. So we're going to be taking a look at that in our first segment of the show today. In our next one, we're going to be focusing on the elections continuing in India, and of course the way that once again that of course we've seen previously as well happen in India. There is again the rhetoric against Pakistan that seems to be a feature point in many of the election campaigns, particularly by the BJP, that have also cited other parties, including the Congress, as being scared of Pakistan, and have also referred to their own personal stance with reference to what they believe is the current situation and what exactly they plan to do. They've also talked about the way that what they call the territory of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir to be something that is part of India. Of course, this is something that was unilaterally done against the UN Security Council resolutions back in 2019, but is something that India continues to assume. And then, of course, with regards to the elections, it seems to have put forward again the anti-Pakistan sentiment to get more voters. So we're going to be seeing what this means, particularly in terms of how elections continue and the impact it will have on its results and future relations that, of course, India is going to be conducting with other countries, including in the region. This is going to be our focus in our shows today. For this and more, as always, in the studios, I've been joined by senior analyst Farrukh Pitafi and Raja Faisal. And we've been joined online by our guest, Brigadier retired Mr. Waqar Khan, who's a senior analyst, and Dr. Kaleem Imam, former IG Police. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being part of the discussion. Let me start with you, Waqar Saab, with reference to what we have discussed already and what we have seen in terms of the way that Pakistan has dealt with the issue of terrorism previously as well. How do you see the current wave of terrorism in the country, particularly in KP and Balochistan, and whether or not do you think that there are any fundamental differences into how we have fought this before and what we're dealing with currently?
Yeah, I think in terms of Afghanistan, there is also important to understand the nature of Pakistan-Afghan relations for last, I think, 4 decades. And if you go back, then I think one can have more in-depth analysis. But Afghanistan not been stable. One was 2 superpower intervention. At time people just forget. They think Pakistan, Afghanistan, they live in a bubble and everything is, happening, basically based on these 2 countries. But there were 2 superpower interventions in last 40 years, and technically a rule of almost 28 years, 8 years by the Russians, and then of course 2 decades by the Americans. So that creates its own, element of instability. There were 5 regime changes, very violent one during this period and after. So now we have Taliban too, so I'll come to that. Taliban, I think, they thought that they could use terrorism as a leverage, despite assurances, despite Pakistan helping them politically, economically, and diplomatically. Even the first, I think, investment conference was held in Islamabad to help Afghanistan and Taliban. But unfortunately, they think that still they could apply, terrorism as a leverage and draw concessions, especially in the erstwhile FATA, and of course related to smuggling or their economic sustenance, which I think Pakistan has very clearly stated and displayed that's not going to work. There's going to be no more blackmail and there'll be zero tolerance. So this is one factor. Then, of course, is the Indian element, especially sub-national groups in Balochistan. This support has been, I think, disclosed by Gulzar Imam Shambe and other leaders who surrendered, who were supported by Research and Analysts and other, and Kulbhushan's case. Then we come to, internal factors like like NACTA. The Aji Saab is here, I'm sure he will further elaborate how it was basically created and what was the basically aims and objectives. So after the military operations and law enforcement agency, whatever I think they have done, it was supposed to be owned by the political government. So there has been, I think, lack of will to display, to establish it of the state and take the initiative. So I think still, I would say that KP government still appears to be, I would say, in double mindset, that either they go with the state's narrative and policy, or they would like to have appeasement as Imran Khan did in last news, which actually then resulted into a backlash. So I think we have to strengthen this basically institution coordination. Then, of course, capacity building of the police and law enforcement, especially in KP and Balochistan. And I think substantial effort has gone in fencing of borders. And I think if there's political will, it is possible. Generally, it is believed that probably, the old way that we can take on, I mean, we can just keep lying down and people can come and hit us. This will not happen. Now, Pakistan has also displayed the military instrument inside Afghanistan, and a strong message has gone. You must have seen that despite some sneak attacks, the frequency is coming down. So hopefully 2024 will be, inshallah, at least control of terrorism in these two provinces, critical provinces. And then, of course, is development, winning hearts and minds, youth to be empowered and given hope, especially in Balochistan and KP in the settled districts now. And so it be development, opening of these areas, mining, education. And if you look at demographics, it's all, youth. So if they are given opportunities, I think we can turn the tables against Taliban and India.
And we'll discuss this further as well in more detail. But Kaleem Saab, I want your response also in terms of the strategies and the approaches that Pakistan has already employed previously. And of course, there was the National Action Plan. And of course, there is a zero tolerance policy. And we've had these measures previously talked about as well. We've had bodies in place looking after this previously too. And while we understand that our armed forces are prepared to deal with any threat, I want to know whether or not you think that there needs to be a reevaluation of our approaches. Is there anything that we have learned previously from our strategies and steps that have been taken, or is there something you think is lacking in the infrastructure that is currently in place or has been used before to deal with terrorism?
And Dr. Saab, allow me to add to this question. I have your book here, In Pursuit of an Ethical State. In chapter titled Policing in a Terror-Stricken World, you specifically talk about the impact of terrorism on police morale. And we have seen that recently, whatever terrorist activities have taken place in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, a huge number of that is targeted at police. Why would that be, and how exactly is it shaping the morale there, sir?
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to join this talks and just supplement. For me, there is a situation.
Kaleem Saab, unfortunately, we're unable to hear you. I think there's some distortion with the mic. If you can also check at your end, and we'll do the same. Let's try again. Kaleem Saab, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, better now. Please continue.
Okay, thank you. I'll just add what Mr. Waqar Sahab had just said. You see, for me, there is a situation out there. TTP is carrying out attacks almost every other day, number one. We also see PLA doing the same thing in Balochistan. We are also seeing the Indians doing cross-border terrorism now. They have done almost, carried out 20 assassinations since 2020. And we recently saw along the Sistan border of Balochistan how the insurgents and how the terrorists, actually created a situation where the two countries, exchanged big blows among them. For me, there's a situation out there. We had this situation earlier also. We had 10 military operations, but did we actually kill the monster? That was the question. Like Mr. Waqar Saab said, that you see, once we have taken, once it was cleared, the next step was the job of the administration, was the job of the law enforcement. You see, we have merged FATA districts, but we hardly give them the money over there. the civic amenities is still very poor, the health, education, and the youth, are quite distracted. So people are not sure what the merger was all about. Now, my second point is, if we are so serious about really handling the situation, you see, we have exhausted national internal security policy. We came up with two, from 2014 to 2018 and from 2018 to 2023, which was a good one. Few of us actually know what is it all about. We never translated them to Urdu and local languages. We never really trained our law enforcement in the academies. Anyhow, it was a good document. But we are still waiting for the next document, which should have been there. We go with the policy that once there's a vacant slot, and then we start doing the things. So we are waiting for the policy from 2023 to 2027. But then we also came up with national security policy. Again, a good document, but never implemented in letter and spirit. My third thing is about NECTA. You see, NECTA was created in 2008, law coming up somewhere in 2013. It still doesn't have an ownership. The point is, are we giving resources to NECTA that we are expecting them to really deliver? Yes, they do some collateral analysis and all that, but out of the strength of 800 people, hardly 500 are working over there. So you can see the seriousness out there. For me, the more issue is how we are actually responding to the situation. And I don't think we are aptly responding as we should. I mean, we could still go into the fourth gear and really come up with a plan, strategy, and policies where we can make a difference. But right now, we see it's day-to-day affairs, it's ad hoc policies, it's expediencies. The question is, there is sanctuaries in Afghanistan, and the people do come over there. These 12 provinces of Afghanistan along Pakistan, more than 2,000 kilometers of borders, that we see that there are fences, and the Pakistan government has done a good job regarding fences. But as we go on the north, we see that the border is still porous, and we need more fences over there, but it's not possible. But the second point is, most of this TTP people are within the country, and we need to sort them out. We need to carry out intelligence-based operations. We just recently lost an army major. He laid down his life for the cause of the duty, and my prayers for him. So we are carrying out this intelligence-based operations, but I again go back to the same point which Pitafi was pointing out. For me, the law enforcement agency is a premier first responder. And you need to build its capacity. You need to put them in front. You need to take them into confidence. You see, they are not even part of the National Security Committee. We haven't even appointed National Security Advisor. So there's a lot of gaps and things that it can be discussed to actually improve our performance out there. NECTA has had 17 national coordinators since its inception. So you see how serious we are. Now the actual fighting force is CTD. The problem is the Punjab CTD is pretty well. They have given them funds. Other CTD are coming up. Now again, how do they collect data? There are a number of reports which have come up recently. The PIPs have come up with one. The US has carried out a study. Some other reports have also come, and all are coming with the same fact that the terrorism exists, radicalization exists. There are groups out there. These are those groups now with heavy weapons, which the US Army left as they left Afghanistan in the haste, and it's in their hands now, and they use those thermal images and all, and they have brought quite a destruction, collateral as well as human loss. And of course, the financial loss is over there. So my focus is on the internal governance. My focus is on the rule of law. My focus is on political stability. So these are some very important factors. Are we all on the same page? I keep on saying police should take a lead, and military should be there as a second or third role, so that when military comes, much has already been done, or when they come, they just take an action and they go back. But police and CTD has to be on the forefront.
Maintain it. And Brigadier Waqar, I'll come towards you. Of course, Dr. Kaleem has rightly pointed out that there are, a stretch of provinces of Afghanistan along the border of Pakistan. Of course, 3 of the provinces, they are named again and again: Kunnar, then Nangarhar and Nuristan. All of these 3 provinces, of course, ISIS Khorasan has presence there, and they are not only there for themselves, but of course they are catering other groups as well, groups from Iran, then from Pakistan's Balochistan, then of course TTP is there, then IMU, ETIM, all of these groups, they are hand in glove with ISIS Khorasan. Isn't it a time when we have to, along with our internal security policy, we have to ensure that the rest of the countries, the bordering countries as well as the Western countries as well, because we have been, having these kind of precedents set in the past, in which we saw that people who were carrying out activities in the Western countries, they were actually trained and they hailed somehow from Afghanistan. Isn't it a time that we have to reiterate the facts with the Western countries as well as the regional countries, that there should be a security consortium that can, of course, make sure that all of these miscreants along the border of Pakistan in Afghanistan, they are given a big blow, number one. And number two, when people like Mullah Akhundzada, they come up with statements in the Jummah sermons, they do say that whoever is carrying out activities, terrorist activities in Pakistan, they are committing a sin. It is haram to, of course, carry out these kind of activities in Pakistan. Then are we somehow still failing to make Taliban realize that these TTPs sitting with ISIS Khorasan are not only a threat for Pakistan, but of course the diplomatic endeavors of Afghanistan as well and Taliban regime, they have to make sure that they should not associate themselves with them outfits that can create a havoc for their, of course, rule of law in their own country, sir?
Yeah, I think to discuss how Pakistan deals it at regional level and international, I think that there have been major developments. If you look, I think we did talk of Moscow format, which comprises of all states bordering Afghanistan or on the periphery, starting from Central Asia, Russia, China, Pakistan, and then we have Iran, and there are observers from Middle East, because now actually look at attack in Moscow and the concerts. So again, finger pointing towards Kabul. Iranians had, I think, serious problems. IS attacking in Chabahar, killing one of their senior military officers of the IRGC. So everybody is worried. And I think Chinese engineers who were killed, unfortunately, in Dasu, and the vehicle came from Afghanistan. So they are also worried because if you look at, I think, the Waqar corridor, the work has started slowing down. Because now Chinese are also realizing that in case their interests are threatened within Pakistan, where the major flagship project of CPEC is threatened, so there may not be fun in developing Afghanistan. I also mentioned recent floods, unfortunate in the northeastern region in Afghanistan, and look at the way Taliban displayed incapacity to actually handle it. I think thousands of people were displaced, and closer to 1,000 people may have died actually. So there are mixed reports because you don't have media. So it means that Pakistan is also to look at Afghan people and the government sitting in Kabul. So you have to bifurcate. Unfortunately, we cannot apply all those levers that I normally talk. There are 8 levers with Pakistan because of Afghan people. There are brothers and sisters. We have hosted 5 million Afghans. It's a world record for the last 40 years. So this number is more than some of the European countries actually. So that's the I think Pakistan. I think we would say Pakistan has displayed the spirit of Ansar and Muhajirin concept and Rasat Medina, that you help your brothers. But unfortunately, if the sitting government thinks that they can apply terrorism as a leverage, then they have to be, I think, communicated very clearly. It's time of corridors and connectivity. The region wants to get integrated. They talk of larger Eurasia, under the SCO, and Afghanistan is a number of these organizations that they have to, or their observers, in case they want to get integrated. And the Taliban should also realize they have to govern almost 30 million Afghans. Some of them are out. There are issues related to women's rights. So internationally also now there is a lot of pressure by Afghan diaspora, which is now living in the West, Iran and Pakistan, and even I think even India. Unfortunately, they play the dual game, but they are also, the media is talking that's too much for the women. So they have to realize that in case they have to survive in the community of nation modern time, they have to then get integrated. And this is not the way. that you, and if you look at Central Asia, especially Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Turkmenistan, which actually border Afghanistan, are directly affected because of the ethnic, overlap. So you have Uzbeks in Afghanistan, and you have Tajiks, and I'm sure some Kyrgyz. So it means that they are also worried that in case again becomes a hub of terror, then start destabilizing Central Asia. So I think regional framework is more important than international. Then you come to UN, already there, and then international media. We have to, then of course in the Middle East, where Taliban had their office in Qatar, and think Qatar can also play a major role. Saudi Arabia is also worried because in case these tentacles expand, then maybe the heat can reach up to Middle, which is already destabilized. So I think all told, Pakistan has to have a policy which should not directly impinge on, let's say, the livelihood of Afghan people, but at least should be able to communicate. So we can definitely, like Afghan transit trade, smuggling, there was a crackdown. Dollar was, being siphoned there. Then you have wheat. Now season is coming up. Afghanistan, I think 25% dependence is on Pakistan's wheat. So for the people, we do it. But for the government, I think they have to understand that cannot survive. And now I think pressure is coming. I heard that there were some provinces, there was a resentment against Afghan Taliban also.
Right, but Waqar Sahab, I also want to understand then, in terms of what you have said of what the Afghan Taliban must realize, I feel that what exactly is the issue then, and where is it? Do you think that it's because the Afghan Taliban don't seem to understand, or is there a communication problem from Pakistan's side that we haven't made it clear enough what we need, what our requirements are, or is there not enough international pressure as well? Because what you said in terms of how they want to exist in the Committee of Nations, it seems that it might not be a priority for the Afghan Taliban regime with the kind of stance that they've put up against the US, or with the way that they're handling things even within Afghanistan. What will really make them realize or come to those grounds? Because it seems that that's not a priority at the moment.
Or another option is whether they want to understand or not, or they are fixated that they do not want to understand at all.
Yeah, I think in terms of dealing with Taliban, Pakistan did try, as I mentioned initially when they came. I would say that Pakistan played a very major role in helping the Americans get out, and then of course Taliban coming into power. Now it was expected that there's going to be stabilization of the border and we start behaving like normal state. But unfortunately, I think there is an element within Taliban, things terrorism still can be applied as a leverage for trying to, like for instance, they want Fatah to fall back to the old state, and they should have their, I would say, extension of the Emirates into Pakistan, which I think we can't allow. But now, fight against terrorism, there's a hardcore military operation going against TTP, and inshallah it will be crushed within this year. So the message is going very strong, and now Pakistan started applying military instrument within Afghanistan against the terrorist entities. So I think message is going, and there is internal pressure developing. Unfortunately, in Pakistan also there is a division on policy. Like even today I was listening to Maulana Faisal. It's very good to talk nice, but look at what is coming from that side. We have to be united on a policy. Now, once they normally, Taliban, they exploit this division. Like what was the decision taken by the last PTI government was kind of appeasement policy, and they thought Pakistan, is a soft state and they could actually push it for their own gain. But unfortunately, I think it backfired, that policy. One, consistency of policy, and I think we can do it militarily. And we talked, Dr. Saab talked of law enforcement, strengthening law enforcement because they're the frontline intelligence agencies, and it is doable. Like Sri Lanka, there was one terrorist attack, and last time I think they've been able to control it completely. The only thing is that we should have consistency of policy and will. And now I think there is internal pressure. Ultimately, Taliban may be 250,000, but they are controlling a country. It's a big country of more than 30 million people, and people have to live. They have to, have facilities of health and education development. This all jihad and all concept cannot, basically help the state to grow. There has to be. So there are a lot of half the population is out of business. The women is not allowed to, come out, education curbs. So now there is internal pressure. So I think Pakistan can steer it, and then of course remain engaged. Regionally also we had Pakistan-Iran coordination in Afghanistan. Then you have regional framework. China is also now worried, and I think they are putting, putting their foot down. So hopefully I think things should, and then of course the international community with the West, large diaspora, Afghan diaspora, which is living abroad, is also worried that pressure can be brought onto Taliban that they should start behaving like a state and not as a non-state actor.
And Waqar sahab, you're right, it's doable. We've done it before. So this is something that, of course, we need to see at the moment as well. And Kaleem sahab, I'll come to you with reference to the law enforcement part that Waqar sahab also mentioned. So in terms of the way that we want to move ahead, and especially in your perspective and the information that you have from how we deal with things on ground, do you think that in the different provinces, particularly in KP and Balochistan and within the different terrorist groups, there are different insights into how we're dealing with them and what sort of approaches need to be taken? Or do you think that the way that we have continued previously as well was something that worked? What sort of angle can you give us from direct interactions on ground that you have observed or seen? And secondly, in addition to the way that we have planned things before, do you think that there can be or should be perhaps increased coordination in terms of what sort of decisions are made on the top? You mentioned earlier that the law enforcement agencies or police personnel are not part of the National Security Committee, and I understand that. Do you think that enough information is not trickling down? Is there something that being done in terms of improving data gathering and data distribution, particularly from decision makers to law enforcement agencies, from the center to the provinces?
Thank you, Sana. You see, I'll just add to what what the discussion is going on. Let me be a devil's advocate for a while. You see, the problem with Afghanistan is TTA and TTP was same. They were fighting against the foreign invaders, so they are related to each other. That's the first point. The second thing is that all Afghans are Pathans. So all these areas that you see, or mostly people are from same tribe, related to one another, so they do have sympathies. The issue with me is, yes, they come cross the border and commit crime and do acts of terrorism, but they are very much present in our own territories. That's the issue with me. The secondly is that when an act of terrorism takes place, there's a planner, there's a handler, there's a facilitator, there's a person who knows how to make a bomb, who reccees, who carries out numerous things before it actually culminates and they achieve their objectives. So where does our agencies, or where is our intelligence? That is one of the questions. Like I said, we must carry out a retreat. We must do research. We must try to understand what we did yesterday and what we can do today better. Why did we fail yesterday, or why we were unable to actually stop that incident which took place? Just on a lighter note, this recent incident of Basham, you would be surprised. They suspended DIG Hazara. He had nothing to do with the incident, And you see, you send a wrong message that actually the people who were responsible, yes, some of them are being taken to task. But how can you suspend someone who's not even in that vicinity? This is on a lighter note. Now coming back to the other part, Sana, which you are saying, you see, I keep on saying, world over, police is the premier law enforcing agency. Police is supposed to handle terrorism. Police is supposed to take part in radicalization. Police is supposed to take part in counter-violence. Do we have radicalization centers? After having seen so much terrorism and violence in this part, we still don't have a proper radicalization centers. Our army has set a few centers in Sawat and some other places. But why isn't the civil and other administration actually coming up with a lot of those? Madrasa is a place, where you can say, well, the breed that comes out over here has a fixed mindset, and it can be a problem. Have we registered all madrasas? Are we bringing their curriculum into our mainstreams? Are we trying to reform what is happening over here? These are all questions, Secondly, my third point would be that state has to be ethical, and this is what my book is all about. There can be no good and bad Taliban. They cannot be asset. Remember, there is no non-state actors. All state actors are supported by some states. So when there are fault lines, you will see people from India or from the other agencies, taking advantage of our fault lines. Our job is to ensure that we don't let enablers and drivers to come in between. Why should we create a fault line or let a fault line to be created? The fault line is like political instability, the issue of governance. You have to be transparent. You have to be accessible. You have to do away with corruption. You have to hold people accountable. My other point would be intellectual dishonesty. You see, what you are seeing now is a bad policies which we carried out a couple of years ago, we allowed Taliban to come into this part. How did they came with their vehicles, with their weapons, and then they are again a Frankenstein monster for us. And again, you know, so many sacrifices are being done up by our very brave soldiers and law enforcement agencies. So we need to look at this aspect that whatever we do, it needs not be a knee-jerk reaction. We have to look for the long term. We need to ensure that local people are involved. Community policing, for instance, you know, I keep repeating these things, is one of a very important aspect that you need to take locals into account. The good thing, the good part in the present era is the entire community is against TTP. But remember, TTP are a bunch of criminals. 4 to 5,000 are actually fighters. They are extorting money. They are going for abductions. They are doing quite unlawful activities in those regions. And when you go after them, you are going to have an encounter in all costs. But in other cases, we should not take extrajudicial means. We should follow the ethical way that the due process is there. When you follow an ethical process, it gets a recognition. It gets legitimacy. And again, I would keep on saying that whatever you promised for Fata merger, why don't you really start with it right like that again? You know, we've just left that, you know, abandoned.
Right. Kaleem Sahab, I believe a clarification is in order. You said that all Afghans are Pathans and all Talibans are Pathans, but Farrukh actually pointed out that that's not correct.
I'm saying that all Afghans, you know, are primarily Pathans. This is what I'm saying. Or all Pathans are primarily Afghans. Most of them you can say in that way. But I'm saying that this part of the border, you know, which constitutes about 12 provinces, which one of our senior, Faisal also pointed out, you know, you see people, all of them are related to each other, you know. That's the reason it becomes more difficult actually to enforce law over there. You know. But like I keep on saying, you need to go back to your policies, you know, that National Internal Security Policy. Where is the comprehensive response plan? The non-kinetic actions which were supposed to have taken place long time ago, since 2014. Where are they? The health programs, the education programs, the civil amenities programs. Where are those programs? You know, we hardly see them on the ground. So if you don't see them on the ground, you won't get sympathies, and people will be unsure of what's happening and how much intelligence or information they are ready to share. All these aspects comes to mind.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Kaleem Imam, for joining us. And thank you very much, Brigadier Waqar, for being part of the discussion as well. And of course, before we conclude, Farrukh, I want to give you a chance to speak as well on this, but also add to that, I wanted to ask another question with regards to our strategy on counterterrorism, especially in terms of accountability. And while we talk about policy, decisions and actions at home, is it also a reflection in terms of accountability, particularly of decision makers? And with reference to the zero tolerance policy, the consequences of which I feel that we're still trying to deal with today because certain decisions led to this current situation.
Right, Sana, thank you very much for that question. I think that we have this fixation with almost unfixable problems, right? We keep on talking about a broken country like Afghanistan and of course a broken ideology like the Taliban's. We keep on talking about past accountability. Of course, these are important things and one has to take care of that. But before that, look at our own discourse. Every time I'm talking about Afghanistan-Pakistan border, we end up talking about divided communities. Do you think that there are no divided communities across India-Pakistan border?
Yeah.
There's no divided community across Iran-Pakistan border, Pakistan-China border, right? So, why is it that all of a sudden I have to actually suspend all the imagination and just think as somebody who is actually joined at a hip with India, Afghanistan? This is a problem. We have been trying to actually, harden the border and fence it. And we have been trying to do it for quite some time. Somehow we have managed to reach 98%. Why is it that we haven't gone beyond that, right? It has been quite a while. Remember 2018, 2019, we were discussing the more or less the same number. It was slightly less, it was 96%. What will it take to go for 100%? Now, there is another issue. I wanted to actually, I was thinking that you are going to come to me when Dr. Kaleem Imam is still with us, because he actually pointed out something. He spoke about NACTA and NISP, National Internal Security Policy. I remember, given that I have done more or less 500 programs on terrorism and written pieces, like hundreds and hundreds of pieces on terrorism, I remember doing shows per chapter of an ISP. The only problem is when I spoke to people who were actually writing it, and many of them thought that it was just a cut and paste affair, that there was hardly any understanding of ground realities in that document. Similarly, NACTA. When NACTA was created, Rahman Malik was the Interior Minister, and at that time Yusuf Raza Gitlani was the Prime Minister. The idea was that the counter-terrorism czar is going to report to the Prime Minister. But because Rahman Malik was such an important player, he ended up monopolizing it. And of course, who wants actually counter to their own policy, right? Why don't we have an NSA? Because your Foreign Office doesn't want that to be created, right? This is simple. So Interior Ministry wouldn't want the power to slip away from them, because they already are living in the age of 18th Amendment, where most of the police power is devolved to the provinces. But then you need a central exchange mechanism for intelligence. We have inaugurated that repeatedly, but we haven't done it yet. And regarding NACTA also, if you can't actually work it, then abolish it. Who's asking you to keep a redundant body?
Right.
I remember when PTI actually took over, they actually wrote an email to me. I'm a journalist, right? And they asked me to actually contribute to their policy, and I asked why. You must have experts. Why are you asking me, right? It is astounding. So if we just want to create more policy objects which are just lying there, then abolish them. But do something about fixing the internal problem first, because that is within your hands, that is within your grasp. The external matters will take their sweet time to sort out. Afghanistan doesn't seem to have a solution, and this is what I was pointing out. When Taliban were taking over, and I was opposing it because I knew that there is no reset button.
Right, absolutely. We're now going to be...
Farrukh underestimates himself. I don't know why, but I think he's fully capable of talking on any policy which is being...
No, I'm not a
no,
counter-terrorism
that was a different
expert,
point.
Right?
But yes, of course, we're going to now be moving on to our next segment, which is going to be, of course, what is going on in the neighborhood in terms of the elections happening in India, and especially in terms of the way that Pakistan is being brought into all the rhetoric in election campaigns, particularly by the BJP. And in the most recent video, we've also seen the Prime Minister speaking about such a sentiment, and of course also talking about the opposition parties. Faisal, what do you make of all of that? And this was of course something that has always been part of the BJP stance, and eventually of course this was something that we were going to be seeing in the rallies. But what exactly, how exactly does this benefit the BJP at this point, and what exactly will be the impact of such statements?
You know, Sana, obviously when we talk about BJP's statements coming out in recent days, and of course very important statements from Modi, in one of the programs, of course, of Arnab Goswami, he did talk about Pakistan a lot, and he did say that, you know, it is not a matter of concern for India anymore. And back in 2014, when he took the Premier office, he made sure that he is not considering Pakistan as a competitor at all. And to me, I think while he was saying these, I was laughing my head off. Reason being, if we take the track record of his you know, administration or his government, we have been seeing in India for almost recent decade, what we saw was everything related to Pakistan, be it Pulwama, be it Uri attack, be it anything whichever was going on in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. It was of course labeled on Pakistan. It is Pakistan that actually stayed on a right track, expecting that from the other side of the border there will be someone of the sane mind trying to sit with us and of course negotiate peace, because we believed in peace, we believed in dialogue, we believed in that eventually all of the conflicts, they are settled with a positive dialogue, not people like Modi, like they do, that they simply ignore the human sentiment, they ignore the regional sentiments, and they ignore the ground realities and facts as well, that there are two mighty armies that are facing each other all the time on LOC. At the same time, both of them, they are equipped with the nukes, and at the same time there is one government that has been performing very sort of, I must say that they were sort of negligent of the fact that dialogue and peace negotiations, they must take place between both of the countries. That's why we saw that Pakistan and India, they almost came on a verge of course a war, a full-fledged war, in which we saw that a sort of attack was which was conducted by the Indian military, a failed attack in which they of course bombed few of our trees, and in response, of course, Pakistan entered in, and in February 2019 we did whatever we did. It is part of the history, and the world knows how we responded and how Modi kept on hiding his face for few days because he had nothing to say on media. That is why he kept on associating himself, rather than humans, he was sitting with the peacocks. And we remember that he grew his beard because out of shame he had nowhere to go. So that is why he's been psychologically minnow at that time, and he kept on trying his level best to utilize any possibility where he could hit Pakistan. We saw in FATF, we saw on LOC, we saw in Kashmir, we saw against the Muslim, whatever he was doing, it was all because of Pakistan he was doing. Yet he has the audacity to say that Pakistan is not a matter of concern.
Right,
for
absolutely,
him,
and I understand your point, but Faisal, we're going to continue now with what it means for these elections. And Farrukh, I want to understand whether you see a shift or a strategy that is being employed by the BJP that wasn't there in the earlier part of these elections, and is this something that they're now using as a final piece or a last resort because other strategies haven't worked?
Right, Sarah, thank you very much. I think that I will actually take your imagination to the world of Harry Potter. We kept on actually thinking that he was that he was either the Dark Lord or that he was a Dementor. He ended up being a Bogart, right? Remember the third book's chapter where too many children are there, so it keeps on shifting shape. I think whatever he is throwing at the electorate isn't working. So he keeps on shifting his shape repeatedly. Do you know, by the way, there's a recent comment. Do you know what did he say? He actually said something about making Pakistan wear bangles. So I wasn't worried about Pakistan. What I was worried about was women of India. And I'm telling you why. Because these boomer Uncle G types of WhatsApp universities, they don't even realize when they're indulging in casual misogyny. Right?
That's so true. I'm so glad you actually raised that.
And unfortunately, confusing bangles, right, which women usually wear with weakness is stupid. They should realize that by now. I mean, the world has actually, woken up to these ideas. If he can't, why is he there? Now, regarding his capacity to actually have an impact, he gave an interview, repeatedly he kept on saying too much about Muslims, baby makers, intruders, right? But then yesterday he gave an interview in which he tells an interviewer that he does not believe in playing Muslim card or Hindu Muslim. So I was wondering, on one side he calls Muslims baby makers, he says that they are polluters, that they are intruders, that the property of Hindus will be stolen and given to them, and that their population increase should be stopped because they have come up with a cock and bull report about so-called Muslim increase in population and Hindu decline. So after all that, he loves you.
Right.
He loves you.
Absolutely.
And he needs money.
Right, absolutely. Fantastic.
Send more
points.
electoral points.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Farrukh, and thank you, Faisal, for joining us in the debate. As always, that's all we have from the show. We'll not see you tomorrow.